Welcome back to another amazing episode of Crusty Car News, but it's not so crusty. Today it's a little ooey gooey, sticky, and a little smelly. So let's get into it. We have 5 amazing great stories for you today. The first one is Jeep, Ram, Dodge, Chrysler, and Stellantis. Absolutely catastrophic going on there today. You're going to love to hear what is in store for the brand. The second story, I can't afford a new car. Viewers are reaching out telling us how bad these dealers are screwing them and they wish they could afford a new vehicle. People are in desperate need. And the third story is every car buyer needs to hear this. That's right, the affordable car is gone by the dodo bird. The fourth story, sadly, the car market crash is starting in 2025. Some huge changes, big impacts. You're gonna want to find out what's going on. And the fifth story, decide to fix your old clunker? Well, guess what? There's a huge scam going on with older cars, and the parts departments now are hosing you down in case you wanted to avoid buying that new car. You're gonna want to find out more. With that, of course, sit back, grab your snacks and your drinks and your beers. Sit back, enjoy the ride. It's gonna be a show. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. So the first story is the great reset of Stellantis, the Jeep, Ram, Dodge, Chrysler products. Yes, unfortunately, things have been changing for them. They've kicked out the old CEO, aggressive changes are coming and being implemented, and with Kuniskis stepping up to the helm, huge changes are planned for the brand. But could it be too little too late with the ever-increasing cost of vehicles and buyers that just don't have the money to buy these vehicles? Inventory levels are climbing, prices are climbing, but sales are down. Let's talk about it. Truck inventory levels are the highest in the market. Jeep products now people are paying over 6 figures for as well. Sales are down in 2024 of the Jeep Grand Cherokee by as much as 12%. Chrysler itself is nothing but a mere shell of a minivan. Durangos are an aging old product that a lot of people are no longer buying because of such strong competition. Nobody wants these vehicles. Nobody wants these minivans. And certainly a lot of these other vehicles like the Dodge Hornet have been a hard sell because of the price point that they're dealing with. When somebody wants these, they typically go Alfa Romeo Tonale, and these Dodge Hornets have not been selling particularly well. Last year, the Jeep Wranglers, the flagship for Jeep, has unfortunately dropped sales by as much as 3%. And even the Gladiator, which is the truck like Jeep, dumped its sales by as much as 24%. And Jeep has seen an overall decline by 9% in sales in 2024. A clear indication that the product is not selling and people are not interested. Ram trucks have been a hard sell, and what makes it even worse, they were scheduled to come out with a pure electric version this year, which now is on hold. Stellantis has had tremendously poor results here in the last couple of years. Now with outgoing CEO Carlos Tavares moving on, there have been changes, and it's happening right now. But with products like this, clearly they were out of touch with the buyer. I mean, the North American buyer is the buyer that would typically buy these vehicles. And how much are they paying now? Durango RT Plus all-wheel drive, $81,000. That's right, out the door, you're $85,000, $87,000. Who's got that kind of money for a garden variety, middle of the road, family style SUV like the Dodge Durango? And products even like the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer with the 6.4 liter V8, there's been a plethora of buybacks because of quality concerns. People are not satisfied with some of the technology, vibration in the drivetrain. Engines that have catastrophically failed means that the quality and the durability of these products is not where customers are looking. They just almost vaporize the brand altogether. Big part of the issue that a lot of people allege is that the last couple of years, the North American market, the North American buyer that would typically buy Ram pickup trucks, Dodges, Jeeps, and all these types of standard garden variety North American vehicles have all been neglected, and that buyer is no longer interested in these high-priced vehicles that are priced outside of the reach of most of the average buyers. That's right, the cost of living crisis is still going round and round. With inflation rates still high, interest rates just holding, people still find a struggle to go out there and spend $100,000 on a full-size Ram, or spend $70,000 on one of these, or even $55,000 on a loaded up Compass. Means that a lot of people are struggling to make any of it make sense. And that's why declining sales have been the name of the game for Stellantis, Jeep, Ram, Dodge, and Chrysler. And the vast majority of the models in Stellantis just have maintained the high watermark
for poor sales. That's right, the most inventory on the lots at any one time. And with vehicles like this that just are not as competitive with the rest of the industry, from GM as well as from Ford or even Toyota, we're looking at prices partially is because the price tag, and we're seeing this one here is at $93,000 for a 1500 Sport Night Crew 4x4. This is a 2025 model year. Clearly the pricing was a big factor, and unfortunately Stellantis as a whole had given up a significant amount of market share. In the last 4 years, when Stellantis became an entity, they actually lost market share from 12.5% all the way down to 8%. And the shares of Stellantis have dropped dramatically as well. And Stellantis chairman John Elkman had recently said that they're going to have to do something much more drastic, get back to basics, get back to what the customers in the North American market are looking for, something that's affordable, practical, reliable. And so there's some products that they look to introduce and reintroduce back into the market to try to bring customers back into the doors to buy their products and try to hopefully gain some of that market share back. You've got to forgive me with the hat on backwards. The wind here is kicking up about 50, 60 mile an hour wind. It's about 0 degrees, it's freezing, and I just have to do this. But basically, what I'm getting at is these vehicles would not have sold. Rams, Jeep, Chrysler products, Dodges, they would not be selling at the end of 2024. And the only reason they knocked down some of their inventory numbers is because of the aggressive incentives. We're seeing incentives that are 7, 8, 9% of the total transaction price. In many cases, as much as 10, 12, 15%. In some cases, exclusively if you're be able to whittle down a deal. Yes, this Stellantis, we noticed that they've struggled in selling a lot of their product, so they've had to get very aggressive in 2024, trying to promote their vehicles as premium luxury upscale vehicles. Where clearly not the brand that they originated. They're meant to be a vehicle for the middle class, the working person, the work lunchbox Joe like you and like I. But they started electing to promote themselves as more of a luxury brand, more of BMW, Audi, Benz. But clearly most people don't see it the same way. Newly elected President Trump also announced in one of his first speeches that electrified vehicles aren't necessarily something that all Americans want. Choice is what Americans want, and that's the big challenge here. The problem with the outgoing Tavares is that he was trying to push on the electrified vehicle, trying to advance that industry, trying to advance those types of vehicles, when in fact a lot of the customer base didn't want them. A lot of people were asking, how am I going to plug in my electric Jeep to a tree? This clearly wasn't a practical solution for a lot of North American buyers. And on top of it, to create an electric vehicle, it costs more money, and it ends up costing you at the end paying for that vehicle. We're paying for the technology, research, development, and unfortunately, choice is something that we were starting to lose control of. On top of it, from my perception, Trump looks to be trying to attempt to dismantle the mandate for electric vehicles here in the United States of America, thus giving the American buyers choice.
So on that note, would you buy yourself a Jeep or Dodge? Possibly if they slash prices, rumor has it 30, 35%, maybe even 50% off the price of a new Ram that they can't sell. 2023s, 24s, lot rot could be an issue, but you can maybe get yourself a phenomenal smoking deal. The second story, so many people out there are reaching out, they just can't afford a new car. Sadly, they feel that the dealers are screwing them. But guess what? There are some great deals out there. Very few and far between. But guess what? I'm going to share a list of 10 of some of the best deals, lowest cost cars that you can buy on the market today. And guess what? Most of them are actually the most reliable vehicles too. It's a double win. I can't afford a new car. I'm broke. The cost of living is cleaning us out. These are common phrases, and I'm getting these comments coming regularly. And you know what? I came across an individual. He was a single father, 2 kids. He makes about $55,000 a year. His car's worn out. Like, he's been pouring money in maintenance and repairs. He tries to do some of the work himself. And how he commented is he just doesn't have enough money to keep that vehicle on the road. It's been a real problem, but he looks around and forget about those $80,000 trucks. Those are sad and pathetic. $90,000, $40,000. Even the Maverick, we once thought that was an affordable vehicle. They thought Ford was going to be clever, but that's not even good. These dealers are rip-off artists and nothing short of that. And it's sad because I'm hearing a lot of stories. And now, cars in a lot of cases are a nice to have, but when you live remotely and your only job is the foundation to your survival, And like this individual named Vern, who reached out to me and said, look, he needs a new car. He just can't afford what he sees. He sees the ads, he goes down to the dealer. There's nothing on the lot but, $50,000, $60,000 SUVs and $80,000 trucks. And he said, I can't do it. On a couple kids and a small income, he's just trying to make ends meet with, paying the rent and paying taxes and paying for food and, schooling costs and trying to pay for all of that. It's heartbreaking. It wrenches and it tugs at the heartstrings. There is a bright future ahead. We're about to see some big changes all over across the globe. And with that, we're hoping to bring some winds of change. We're hoping to bring affordable vehicles, choices. We know already that there was a signing of the incoming president to say, look, the mandate for EVs is over. And so that may, in fact, bring some more affordable vehicles. So Vern, with his struggles that he's been challenged with over and over again, just trying to keep that vehicle on the road, saying that he walks into the car lots and just finds these expensive vehicles. Well, Vern and everybody else, you know what? It's not over. So if you could all write future in the comments section, that really helps the algorithm as well, if we're being honest, because this will reach out to more and more people. Those looking for deals, those looking for affordable vehicles. Maybe you don't want that Escalade. Maybe a lot of you just want a simple, basic mode of transportation, something reliable, but new is good. A lot of people can fix their own cars. So I'm just enough noise and nonsense. Please write future in the comments section below. Don't forget a thumbs up. That all helps the algorithm. Like I said, more people find out, the better. So I'm going to break this down. I'm going to share 10 of probably the cheapest vehicles you can find in the US and largely Canada. We're going to work from the most expensive down to the least expensive. Please do wait to the end. You're going to love it. You know what? There is hope in the future, not just for the car market, but as well, hopefully for your paychecks and cost of living. Toyota Camry. You can get a base model Toyota Camry. We know LE, the LE and we had all these different variations, SE, XSE. Things have changed now. They're going pretty much hybrid, but you can get a brand new base model Camry for $29,835. Okay. I know that's not super cheap, but that's relatively affordable. The next one is a Honda Accord, nipping at the heels of the Toyota Camry. And granted, you're not going to find a fully loaded Lariat F-150 on this list. I'll just warn you right now. But if you're looking for something affordable, this is your list. So the Honda Accord, another fairly reliable car, $29,445. Primarily comes in hybrid formats. But, the Hondas have always been reliable cars. Hyundai Sonata. Now, Hyundai, they're kind of a cute looking car. I wouldn't say they're the most reliable, although things have gotten better. I would probably veer more towards the Hondas and the Toyotas. But if you want something a little bit different, the Sonata at $27,995. Now, it's a mid-size four-door sedan, so it's got the space, it's got you covered. If you've got a couple of kids, 2, maybe 3 kids, or 2 spouses and say a couple of kids, these types of cars are going to serve you well. There's enough room, there's a big trunk, and it's just an easy car to live with, and it's not going to cost you a ton of money. I believe they have a good warranty on them, backing a lot of the Hyundai and Kia products too, because of some of the issues they've had in the past with some of their engines, so they now have some stronger warranties. If you want something a wee bit sportier, maybe you're a little bit strapped, you don't have the full 30 beans for, say an Accord or a Camry, you can get into a Honda Civic. $25,400 is a starting point. And they're great cars. We have a Civic too, an older one. I stand by them. They're low cost of maintenance. They're reliable, easy on gas, moderate on insurance. And the only reason the insurance costs are a little bit higher is because of the association with young buyers and typically higher risk drivers. A Subaru Impreza. Now, we know Subarus have had some mixed responses, and the flat 4s have had some troubles along the way. It looks like the later generations are better. Now, that said, they're come with CVTs, and not everybody loves the way that drives. The continuously variable transmissions are a little buzzy. Reliability wasn't the best, but the Subaru Impreza, you get the all-wheel drive, probably one of the best all-wheel drive systems in the market. And for a vehicle that is very competitive with the Civics, it does give you actually, the competitive edge is the all-wheel drive, where the Civic is only front-wheel drive. And we're talking about a Toyota Corolla, $23,460. So Vern, everyone else, if you're looking for an affordable car, the Toyota actually could have you covered. Maybe you want something from the VAG group, okay? We know Volkswagen has had some struggles, but with that, there's lots of incentives. I've heard of some pretty immense lease incentives on the ID4. Now, not a lot of people want the electric vehicles, and they're pretty expensive to buy outright because they're electric. The R&D behind that is kind of pricey. But if you want a Volkswagen, you like kind of the idea of having kind of the Das Auto, you can get into them for fairly cheap. Now, the quality is not what it used to be, and it may not be the most reliable pick, but the price is kind of reflecting. And actually, for this price, it's a hard one to ignore. The Volkswagen Jetta you can get from $23,222 or $220. I'm going to be honest. Again, I've said, you know, Hyundai, Kia, reliability has been challenged in the past, but with better warranties these days, longer durations, you can get into some pretty affordable new Kias. Think about this. Kia K4 for $23,165. Kia K4. It's actually a pretty car too. It has some cute headlights. And if you want to get into something that's very affordable, 23 grand? I mean, there's, you know, we're pretty much at the point where you can't find anything under 20 grand anymore. Mitsubishi had that one, and everything's sort of going away. You can't get anything really under 20 anymore. So at 23,000 and change, the Kia K4 is kind of a mid-level car, mid-size car, but actually has a little style to it and a decent warranty. So the Hyundai Elantra, Here's another one. Again, good warranty, a little bit smaller, but same idea as the K4. But we have a Hyundai, wee bit smaller, $23,035, 23 grand and change. But with that said, the Nissan Versa is your cheapest, best bet on the US market right now at $18,330. So Vern, anyone else, don't fret. The future is bright. So please hit future, write it in the comments. I would appreciate it. It really does go a long way to support the channel. So on that note, would you yourself buy one of these? I've been looking, I've driven many of these vehicles, and I think there's some great options out there. If you're limited on budget and you want to buy a new car, they could be a winner. The third story, every car buyer really needs to hear this. Affordable vehicles, they're pretty much going away. I mean, look around at car lots. It's not hard to find the prices have jumped up 30, 40, 50% in the last 4 or 5 years. It makes buying a car almost unobtainium for the average car buyer. Guess what? Things are getting even worse. If you thought you were going to buy yourself a used car, think again, because with the shrinking inventory to some of the catastrophic issues we're finding across the globe, things are impacting the used car market too, driving those prices up. Let's talk about it.
All these classic old cars, and I looked at the Google images of what this street looked like. This was a beautiful green car parked right in front.
This is when a lot of people had nowhere to go. They abandoned their cars because the flames were fast approaching.
We're seeing used car inventory rise on almost every single car lot. I mean, just look around. We get all kinds of vehicles from Lexus. We get Genesis, Rams, Dodges, Hondas, Toyotas, Fords, you name it. Vehicles are piling up. Inventory is rising at an alarming rate, but things are changing. The price of each and every one of these vehicles has just gone up by a significant amount of money because of some of the major changes that have just happened in the industry. And so far, the damage looks to be close to 275, maybe $300 billion in total, all said. And when scouring, it shows quickly that within that VIN and that area code that you're looking at a combination of as many as 25,000 new and used vehicles that potentially could be impacted, destroyed, or wiped out entirely by those fires. We also heard earlier in the year with these hurricanes and what we saw here this summer over in Florida and Texas, how it wiped out tens of thousands of vehicles, which clearly cleaned them off the market and made finding a good quality late model used vehicle that much more harder. This is happening in Florida, Texas, and now California. This is having a huge impact to the affordability crisis. Getting a good quality used vehicle especially from the likes of Toyota, Lexus, and even Honda, are harder and harder to find. Vehicles like the Bronco, we saw those overinflated for the last couple of years. They were hard to come by, there were shortages at the lot level, and people were willing to pay all kinds of money for brand new ones. They were paying as much as 10, 15, 20% over sticker for brand new ones. Now you're starting to see the odd ones show up at the car lot. But what's happening there? Well, because there's less and less and more of these impacted by some of these natural disasters, these popular models like this, when people don't want to spend that huge dollars for brand new, a few of these are starting to show up. These prices are going to hold very, very strong on popular models like Broncos, like some specialty AMG Mercedes, hold their value very, very well. And the natural disaster, think back 2012, they said the average vehicle that went up, the average vehicle price that went up about $300 simply because those 250,000 vehicles that were impacted. Every single one of these natural disasters and these major events is having an impact on the sales price of these vehicles. We're also seeing used vehicles go up in general because of the shortages, because of the high prices of brand new. A lot of people are pushed down into the used car sector, and now that generally means that it's becoming less and less affordable. Less small cars available. Those are getting scrapped and written off, and more the trend of used vehicles looks to be following the lateral lag of brand new vehicles, which are typically SUVs, trucks, and those are all typically quite high. The average transaction price of a used vehicle is going up year over year. Every single year we're seeing prices go up. Brand new, $48,000. Used, we're up around 30 grand for a used vehicle these days, because people want that late model used vehicle. They want that fun vehicle that they don't pay the full dollars for, but those prices are going up. Like vehicles like Lexus, Toyota, prices going up. Used pickup trucks that are clean with low miles going up. Nobody's looking at these for secondhand, or these per se, they're not all that popular. And vehicles like Audis and Mercedes-Benz resist that typical trend, as do vehicles like the Alfa Romeo like this, are typically vehicles that depreciate harder and become less desirable outside of lease and warranty. But the fact remains is even vehicles like the small Bronco, small affordable Nissan products like this, or even practical vehicles like minivans, means that the majority of these vehicles, prices just keep on rising, making them less and less affordable for your mainstream consumer. So the things that consumers need to be aware of is making sure that when you're looking for a used vehicle, check the Carfax car proof. Make sure you don't have accident history. Make sure no flood damage, that it hasn't been written off. Those are things you've got to be watching for, because as we see more and more shortages, there's going to be more and more dealers trying to pull shady deals on people, trying to sell, rebadge things, spray paint some problem areas, finish the interior, put a new set of seats, just to try to pass off a vehicle that's of less quality.
So what are your thoughts? Are you thinking about maybe fixing your old clunker, just staying out of the market altogether? May not be a terrible idea at this time. The fourth story, 2025 car market crash is hitting us hard now. A lot of it starts right now with the presidential election and the results of the signing off of eliminating electric vehicle mandates. Would you believe it? American buyers now have choices and options. They don't have to be forced to buy an electric vehicle. But there's a whole plethora of other changes, manufacturers that just can't compete. Volkswagen's struggling, Nissan's struggling, Stellantis is struggling. Where does it end? Can you get a deal? Is the market crashing? Well, let's talk about it.
The 2025 car market crash is finally here. We're seeing all kinds of news and examples of this, from the first car company to actually go out of business in 2025. And with the incoming president signing off on removal of the mandates of electrified vehicles, means one thing: companies with millions of dollars tied up in investments, research and development of their new electric vehicles, they've thrown all that money out the window, because many people are going to revert back to internal combustion vehicles, meaning a lot of car companies will become obsolete. And with many car companies like Volkswagen, who overinvested in electrification, advanced it too quickly, it isolated a lot of buyers. Unfortunately, the EU regulations is advancing and fast-tracking 2030, 2035 regulations for emissions. And sadly, now that puts companies like Volkswagen and VAG, Audi, Porsche Group all at serious risk of going out of business. This year is a big one. On top of it, the worst part is the recent president incoming in the United States has also suggested that they might apply some serious tariffs to any European country, simply because they don't have a huge representation of American vehicles. On top of it, vehicles like these, the Rams, now are looked at because Kuniskis came back at the power and said, look, we have to get the company back in business. We have vehicles now that are no longer selling, and the electrified Ram is no longer going to be fast-tracked. It's going to be put on the back burner, and Ram may even consider bringing back the V8 powered drivetrains for their pickup trucks. A lot of the Stellantis products are in serious distress because they were owned by a European company, which has more of an electrified incentive and priority in mind, sadly leaving a lot of their North American buyers out dangling in the wind. And with prices like $85,000 for a Wrangler Rubicon X 4xe, just means that the prices have gone out of touch with the average buyer. And sadly, things don't look to be getting any better. While there's been heavy incentives in the fourth quarter of 2024, the base price is going up on a lot of these core vehicles. And car companies like Stellantis has a few electric vehicles. The Fiat 500e, they have the Wagoneer S, as well as the electric Charger, and one of their ProMaster vans are some electric vehicles that they have in their arsenal, all clearly not selling particularly well. And other than one little Fiat in their fleet, the majority of the product line in Stellantis has seen drastic falls in sales. Ram trucks like this entire fleet here have gone down in sales by as much as 19%. Dodge products like this little Hornet, as well as a Durango, went down by as much as 29% in 2024, a clear indication nobody wants these products. Alfa Romeo dropped about 19% as well. The Chrysler product line also dropped by 7%, and really all they have is the minivan, so it should be of no surprise. But if you're looking for a van, a lot of times people are just going to Toyota and Honda. They know they can trust those, and these are not all that cheap either. You'd think for a vehicle lacking in reliability that you get a break on the pricing, but here instead you get this long, lean and mean minivan. And here we have, look at this, base price $47,000, and you get a list of options right here, and it takes you to a grand total of $50,000 for a base minivan. Out the door, 55 grand. You know they're out of touch. And even Jeep sales fell as much as 9% in 2024. Clear indication that it's not because of the popularity issues, because a lot of people do love the vehicles like the Wranglers as well as the Jeep Grand Cherokee. It really boils down to price. Price is what dictates how people are going to buy these vehicles. And you look at the sticker in the window, and right here you'll notice $85,000 for this Jeep here too. And while we talk about the cost of living crisis, there is a small percentage of people out there say there's actually no crisis at all. Many would beg to differ on that conversation, because realistically it's only about the top 5% that are actually thriving enough to be able to go out there and write a check for one of these brand new vehicles. The reality is the top 90-95% of the population is struggling right now. Cost of living crisis, housing, food, groceries, you name it, it's a struggle right now. And Nissan sales have been in the tank this year. The first part of 2024 showed that they lost about 99% of their profits, all tied up into marketing schemes, into incentives, just to try to push a lot of these products out the door. Rogues, problems, of course, we're hearing a lot of with the variable compression engines, the CVT transmissions. Nissan Sentra, same sort of storyline, as well as the Altima, which is a lackluster product when you have Camrys and Accords available. And then car companies like Ford continue building larger and larger pickup trucks, like these very expensive Harley Davidson trucks. They're great. I mean, they look wonderful. I love the looks of these, the big wheels, the big flares, all kinds of lift kits, and you know what, lots of nice, great badging. But these vehicles aren't cheap. At $180,000, $190,000 makes a person wonder who can afford these. But yet we have all these trucks loading up the lots. Who's buying these vehicles? Who can afford to buy these full-size HD trucks? Here's a 350 Platinum. That's not going to be cheap. Here's as well another diesel. Well, let's take a look. This is more of a work truck. You've got the plastic grille. Everything's more plastic, fantastic. Pretty basic vehicle. How much is this unit? Well, $117,000. And this one does have leather, it looks like, but it still feels a little bit dressed down, and that shouldn't, because this is a Lariat. It does have leather and sunroof, but it doesn't look like it has all the amenities. It does have a little bit more of a dressed down look, and maybe that's what's going on. Ford said they're dropping thousands of parts on their new pickup trucks because they're creating more of a modularity and reducing the number of components within each individual vehicle. Maybe there's some cost-cutting measures. In my opinion, this looks to be one of them right there. And then Ford is leading the recalls. They have a huge one right now, of course, with the Mustang Mach-E with the self-driving system, where there's allegedly a couple of fatalities related directly to the programming or the design of that automated driving system. Beautiful truck finishing on the front of this thing. You circle around. How much is this unit? Well, let's take a look. Oh wow, 6 figures all day long. See, because 2025 looks to be a transition year. A lot of people are looking for more cost-effective vehicles. We see interest rates aren't changing a lot, and that will have a huge impact on the sales of a lot of these vehicles. As vehicle prices continue to rise, less and less people are in the market. And Volkswagen sales have been down this year as well, and they continue to drop, with their ICE vehicles showing less and less interest by the consumers due to the quality challenges that we're finding in a lot of these products. The quality just isn't there from my own personal perception. And you look at a lot of these vehicles, they just are lackluster in design, a little boring, a little ho-hum. And honestly, now their transition to the EV market means that Volkswagen is in a tough spot. Experts over at Volkswagen say that in 2025, they're looking to have about a $1.6 billion impact negatively against the brand because of trying to meet these regulations, these EU regulations to the transition to cleaner fuels. A big part of the brand is with these new electric vehicles such as the ID.4, Buzz ID, and all these fun little electric vehicles. Less and less people are getting excited about the brand. And this year, in an attempt to try to save costs, Volkswagen had to shut down at least 2 plants, maybe possibly even more, and lay off thousands of workers, all because they could not meet their budgets. Volkswagen was in a struggle this year. Employees weren't happy, buyers weren't happy, nobody was happy. Now on top of it, with this incoming President Trump, he's actually saying, you know what, for years, these European countries have got up scot-free. They're bringing all these vehicles to North America and customers are buying these vehicles. But now, instead of this, where are the US vehicles in Europe? There are very few. And Trump has already alleged that when he gets into power, he's looking at applying some major tariffs. What I heard was he's looking at applying tariffs to the point where you either shut them down completely, or there may be a big possibility that the tariffs are so large, if they want to conduct business in North America, they're going to actually have to relocate, bring plants to North American soil, and employ North American workers. And then the Toyota Tundra is another classic example of a vehicle that's no longer selling like they initially did when it first came out. Now you can find virtually tons and tons of inventory. When you're talking about Tundras and Tacomas, the pickup trucks in Toyota have struggled with quality control issues. The twin-turbo V6 engine found in these Tundras have been the source of a lot of struggles and a lot of controversy for Toyota brand for catastrophic engine failures. And this year, another small company called Mobility Motors sells services, cars, vehicles from Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai, as well as many others, and Mazda for inclusively, has struggled this year with sales. They're down $9.5 million in terms of overall debt, trying to pay their creditors, parts, replacements. And it's another example of many companies now, this year in 2025, are stuck trying to reorganize their company, sort out their wins, discard their losses, and find ways to try to stay in business. They had a tough year in 23, 24 looks even worse, and unfortunately, there's lots of stories like this with small companies going out of business every single day. Canoo is the next one to go out of business. It's a startup EV company. They've had struggles staying afloat. They've tried to integrate with numerous other companies just to try to get their vehicles out to market, and things were looking positive. Things were looking upbeat, but unfortunately, the market is so cutthroat this year. 2025 promised to sift out the weak. The weak will fall through the cracks this year in 2025 as competition is fierce, and the electric vehicle market is coming in fast and furious from the Chinese market, not to mention the stricter EU regulations in Europe, and as well as some of the tariffs that may be imposed to a lot of car companies, means that this year could be tough for a lot of companies starting up, trying to keep going and keep their doors open.
Are you optimistic like I am? I truly believe there's going to be some amazing deals this year. It's going to be catastrophic for some vendors. There might be some consolidation and amalgamation of some different brands, but at the end of the day, there could promise to be some great deals. This is the turn in the tides. The fifth story, car parts scam fully exposed. Why is it now all of a sudden you want to try to keep your older vehicle just trying to stay out of the market, and now the parts department to try to keep your old vehicle on the road are starting to gouge? Have you ever seen the prices for new brake pads, a new water pump starter? Yes, they're gouging the consumer too. Find out how bad. We're seeing average people paying as much as $700 per month for their car loan, $500 a month for a used car, and on top of it, about 20% of the car loans out there are over $1,000. And if you're coming from Canada, you can appreciate to spend under $1,500 to $2,000 is actually quite hard to find. So people are spending more and more on brand new cars. Obviously, there's this heavy lean and the popularity of used car sales has really skyrocketed. We're seeing used car sales jump through the roof. Popularity, during the last 2 or 3 years, it's been extremely hard to find quality late model used vehicles because they've been scoured up. On top of it, we have situations where we have these natural disasters like we just saw in California, like we saw in Florida and Texas with the floods and the hurricanes. There's natural disasters taking more and more used cars off the market every single day. But there's a little trick in the back door, and what we're talking about are used cars and used car parts. Now I've been watching this market for some time because a lot of people realize instead of spending that $80,000 on that new truck or that $50,000 on that new SUV and having a car loan over $1,000 a month, why don't I just fix what I've got today? Fixing your old clunker represents good value, and during a cost of living crisis, I'm one of those very advocates for the very simple fact that if you've got a good quality vehicle and it's older, keep fixing it. Why not? Buy new if you need to. But you know what? Buying an older used vehicle represents a great value in some cases. So what is it? Shopping around for a few parts. Go down to Napa, Canadian Tire. You go to any Pep Boys. It doesn't matter. You can find used parts everywhere. Recycling is up. But with all of that said, here we are in a capitalist market. And when supply and demand don't necessarily meet in the middle, we find some strange obscenities in the market. And this is what we're actually starting to see. So where people make a decision to fix their old clunkers, of course, what does that mean? Heading on down to the repair shop, or more importantly, a lot of people are DIYers. YouTube's a wonderful place with all kinds of advice on how to fix your car, how to replace parts, how to get it back on the road. As a matter of fact, recently we bought a couple of cars. And you know what? We bought older used cars for our kids, and we've decided to put a few dollars into them. We're thinking instead of buying a new $30,000 car, why not buy a $5,000 car and throw a few dollars at it? We did just that, for example. And I want to share with you what I personally see what's going on in the used car market, but more importantly, the parts market. And I think there's a serious scam, and I want to expose this because as more and more of us decide to make that choice to buy older used cars or fix what we've got, we're not the only ones onto this. These car parts manufacturers are onto this too. Last year, my old Ram, it had an oxygen sensor that failed. I tried in all my infinite wrenching abilities to replace it and pull that O2 sensor out of my truck. Well, let's put it this way. I had all kinds of struggles. I could not get the oxygen sensor out of the truck for the life of me. It was a challenge. It was rusted in there. It was old. The truck's 22 years old. And the O2 sensor just simply wouldn't come out. So I took it to the dealer. I took it to one Dodge dealer here in town. They couldn't take it. They tried. They took a look at it and said, you know what? They brought it in. They brought it out. An hour later, they called me up, said, we don't have time to fix this right now. Book another appointment. Well, that's why we're here. These dealers don't want to fix your old stuff because they'd rather sell you a brand new truck, okay? Then I took the truck to another Dodge dealer in town. They also took it behind the shop. I sat in the waiting department for a period of time, and only 2 hours later they come out. Sorry, we can't fix it. We're going to need more time. Book another appointment. The mechanic said he broke his wrench. What? These people do this every single day. They have tools. They didn't want to work on it. But instead of telling me the truth, or they have difficulty, or they're incompetent to replace these parts, they'd rather push you off to the showroom and have you look around and buy a new truck instead. There's much more money in it. Get another vehicle in circulation and send my old clunker to the scrapyard. Well, I wasn't having it. So what I did was I decided to go down to a muffler shop. I took my truck in there. They said, yeah, we can't get it out. What we'll do is we'll cut it out, we'll re-weld the bung, and honestly, out the door, I think it was $120 later for the repair, and then they threw another sensor in there, and that O2 sensor wasn't all that much. I think it was about 80 bucks. Okay, and it was the one that had the heater element in it. So it preheats, simulates on a cold engine. You get the gist, right? So it was an interesting soiree, if you will, but for, barely over a couple, $250, cut, weld, new sensor, I was out the door. But that was a small little independent muffler shop. The dealers wanted no part of it because they didn't see the money in it. They didn't see the value the mechanics are throwing away. Of course, they work by the book and the mechanics don't want to touch it. It seems like a very greasy market right now. If you've got an older vehicle, nobody wants to work on it. So you've got to fix it yourself. Herein lies the conundrum. So you can't get support anymore for your older vehicles at the dealer. Again, and I've said this already, I'll say it again, they want you to buy new because there's more money in it. Because eventually that becomes used, then they'd rather work on a 5-year-old used truck than a 25-year-old used truck. And so on top of it, now myself, my Ram, I'm starting to buy them shopping for parts. I go down to the Napas, in the US, you have your Pep Boys and you have a variety of other parts manufacturers. But what we're finding is now there's a big demand in the used car market, in the used car parts section. We're also seeing popularity in recycling aluminum, recycling steel. We're seeing 3D printing being more popular, creating parts from 3D printers. We're seeing a lot of oddities. We're seeing success in certain car markets. Certain car manufacturers and vendors that sell and manufacture used cars and the parts that go with them are seeing massive profits. Yes, they're making a ton of money. Their profit margins are going up. They're making money hand over fist. While a lot of the sector is going down and can't succeed, other parts of the market are thriving. And that's used cars. We're seeing a lot of the used car manufacturing going up. Their profits, their stocks, their value are absolutely out of this world. Why? Because used car parts is a thriving, new, upcoming, emerging market. There's always been used car parts. You've always had a need for putting a new starter in your car, or a new water pump, or new O2 sensor. There's always been that market and it's always existed. But it's never been as strong as it is today. You see, with more and more people electing to fix their old clunkers like I'm doing, more and more of these parts manufacturers are getting onto and getting the wiser. They're starting to realize that there's actually a huge opportunity for huge profits. And there are. And I'm finding it's getting beyond where it's practical, and it's getting to the point where they're gouging now. Okay, so let me give you another example. We just bought ourselves an older used Toyota RAV4. Okay, this vehicle is a wonderful vehicle. It's got low miles, 70,000 miles on it, but it's been sitting around a lot. And vehicles that sit a lot tend to, they plug off. They sort of deteriorate in their own way. Vehicles that just sit and sit and sit. And this is a vehicle that I would quantify in that area. Low miles, just sits and naturally deteriorates. The brakes didn't work well. So what I did was I spent a day flushing the brakes. Okay, I decided I was gonna bleed all the brakes, put new brake fluid in there, and it changed them 200%. Absolutely changed the dynamic of the vehicle. But while I did that, I changed the front pads because this vehicle's got drum brakes, but it's also got front pads on the front. So I want to share this story because to me this is very important. What a lot of used car buyers and a lot of used car owners are dealing with. The gouging at the dealership level, but the gouging at the parts levels too. Okay, so what I found was we needed a set of front pads. Well, I went on down to Napa and I found a set of their mid-grade pads that I spent, I think it was about $100, $110 for. And that's in Canadian dollars. And that in itself seemed extraordinarily high because I remember 3 or 4, 5 years ago doing pads on my truck. We even had an older BMW X5 that had some brakes that I needed to do on it. And those pads were like $30, $40 for a set of pads, like for a complete set, like a front. And the rears were another $35. So it's strange to me now how all of a sudden a set of pads for a 2002 Toyota RAV4 is costing me $100. There's a serious gouge effect going on here. And they're on to us. They're on to us as the used car owners that want to fix our own and be thrifty. See, the system is designed to gouge the consumer on every single corner. In the cost of living crisis, we've never seen it more than we have in the last 5 years. But we're starting to see it not just in brand new cars, we're starting to see in car parts. There's no way on this earth that I should be paying $110 for a set of brake pads. You know what it takes to manufacture that set of pads? When they're on an assembly line, the box is worth almost as much as the pads. Those pads probably cost $4 to make, and they're selling them for $110. Now, we know Napa takes their cut. The shipper, there's distributors. I mean, you got the end retailer, the distributors, the manufacturers, there's sales in between. There's all kinds of different layers that want a piece of their cut. I get it. Everybody wants, it's a free market. But this is what's starting to happen. There's starting to be some serious gouging. Okay, fine. Move on. Because I changed those pads myself, because at $100 plus my labor, which is 4 or 5 hours in the shop bleeding the pads and bleeding the brakes and putting the pads on, I thought $100 out the door was a good deal compared to what the dealers quoted us. We said we needed front brakes done and bleed the system. They quoted us $1,100. For 2002 RAV4, $1,100. You heard me right. You talk about a serious gouging going on in this marketplace. Used parts, the dealership network is screwing customers upside down and every which way from Sunday. Things are getting nasty out there. And so not only are the brand new vehicle prices getting out of control, used car parts in general are getting out of control. Let me give you another classic example. This same RAV4, 4 days into ownership, all of a sudden, bing, check engine light. Like the previous owner had no knowledge of this. Like this was a first of a kind. But that's another conversation for another day. And we always speak of doing all your checks and balances when you buy used cars. You can never 100% be sure. But this was a situation where all of a sudden, lo and behold, a check engine light popped up. Well, I plug in my code reader and I find, as usual, it spits out a code. Oxygen sensor. Hey! For my 2002 Toyota RAV4. And this oxygen sensor was one which actually was this same one as in my Ram. This one was an upstream. So upstream of the catalytic converter, there's two banks, bank 1, bank 2, and then there's two sensors on the load side. So it's detecting the emissions essentially across the cat to make sure the catalytic converter is doing its function. So it does 2 upstream, 2 downstream, and there are actually 4 of them, surprisingly, on a 4-cylinder, but that's the way it is. And so it was the upstream one, which has a built-in heater element, similar one that I had on my Ram. But about a year ago, that part from the muffler shop, that they have their own means to get their own products and their parts. They have their own costs. I paid something like $70 for that sensor, okay, through the vendor who was selling it to me at their at their markup price, okay. So I paid like $70 for that sensor. Here we are, a year later, in a RAV4, and the dealer is charging me. They wanted to charge me $499 just for the sensor at the parts shop. This isn't parts and labor. This is the sensor for the oxygen sensor for the Toyota RAV4. Okay, so I'm thinking to myself, okay, I know how this game works. Dealers always gouge. That's what they do. That's what they know, and that's how they live. Okay, let's go to Napa. So I went to Napa and I called them up and I said, hey, I need the upstream bank 1 sensor, bank 2 sensor 1, oxygen sensor, and gave them the same criteria. You know what their number was? $472. Lo and behold, there's clearly cahoots going on here. And clearly parts price shopping going on. And there's a little bit of this back and forth games that's being played in the parts departments. And it doesn't just happen out at the dealers. Now we're seeing it at the independent parts shops. I already mentioned I paid what I thought was quite a significant cost for a set of brake pads. And now they also want to charge me $500, virtually almost the same dollar figure as I was going to pay at the dealer network, at the dealer's parts department. This is just the parts cost, $500 for an oxygen sensor. This isn't a Ferrari. This is a 2002 Toyota. And so parts are getting extraordinarily expensive. They're seeing opportunities in the scrapyards to recycling. They're seeing opportunities to recycle materials, 3D printing, and parts where, again, I already said this, there's huge profits in recycling, huge profits in parts sales. That's where this trending the market seems to be going. So while you think you're going to save a ton of money on the price of brand new vehicles by not buying them and buy and fix your old cars, and there is still a lot of money to be saved there, don't get me wrong, because I'm still a strong advocate for fixing your old clunker. It's still a relatively small cost instead of spending your $1,000 or $1,500 a month payments. I can do a lot of those kind of weird repairs for a monthly car payment. The fact remains is they're getting on and they're getting wise to what's going on out there. And that's people are electing to fix their own cars. And so instead, what I went was, I'm going to say it, I went to good old Amazon. Our Prime account, I logged in, wham, bam, okay, different brand. I looked through the reviews. The reviews are primarily positive. It's 4.5 star. And I found one that fits the bill. Guess what? $52. That's right, $52. Doesn't have the same brand name on it. It's likely the same product. It looks physically the same. And the reviews are all good. I'm going for the $52 oxygen sensor. And it even specifies bank 2, sensor 1, all the same criteria, the same make, model, year, $52, folks. And even that, they're making profits. So whoever the seller is selling that $52 sensor is making money on it. They're probably getting it for 30 bucks, putting a $20 markup on it and calling it good. So what is going on in this industry today, folks, is some serious gouging. It's bad enough that the consumers, we work hard for our money. I mean, I talk to countless people. They text me every single day telling me about the struggles that they've had. They can't afford to make ends meet. They can barely afford to feed themselves. Did you also know there's an emergency? Kingston, Ontario. The latest I heard this news. They're in a state of emergency. 1 in 3 households has a struggle getting food. There's not food availability or money in the household to be able to afford to feed the family. 1 in 3. They've actually declared a provincial state of emergency. That is a serious, serious problem we're having here, folks. People can't afford to eat. People can't afford a roof over their head. And car manufacturers are gouging consumers like this. And car parts manufacturers are now getting on the wagon. So things are getting out of control in this entire industry. And I wanted to bring this whole scam alert, in my opinion, because this is what's happening in all sectors of the market. There's no way that this needs to be this much money. But on that note, it's still always worth holding on to what you've got, fix it, keep it on the road longer. Chances are you're going to save a ton of money by going that route. And with all of that said, again, as always, you know what? If you're approaching 40, 50 years of age, you want to find out how I retired, how I cut free from the corporate grind, definitely check it out. My other channel, Retiree is Me, looking for some love over there. You're going to love it. Some great walk and talk and coffee chats. You're going to enjoy it. Please do be sure to subscribe to that channel. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.